Hi there, this is Ian Wright, and this little chat is called Developing and Cultivating a Practice, which is a subject close to my heart, and I just wanted to talk to you a little bit about it. Any information or any more interest that you find in these kind of subjects, check my website, which is called thedynamicsofstillness.com, where there's a forthcoming book. Information is with the publishers at the moment. I have finally finished it, and little podcasts and little hints and tricks and stuff. Podcasts are on a variety of subjects, wide variety of subjects. So, developing and cultivating a practice. What I'm meaning, although it's not really what I do, is a meditative practice. Okay, I mean, actually, the work that we do with the dynamics of stillness is much more than that. It's developing sensory awareness and lots of different kind of practical techniques, but of which part of that is a meditative element, a contemplative practice. What is a practice in this subject? It is, I think, doing something regularly. And the point I'm trying to make here, which I'll come back to quite a lot, is this process of cultivation. The Taoists would talk about this process of cultivation. And what it means, very simply, is the more you do something, the more you can do it. It sets a groove. And it actually, at its best, if you can cultivate a connection to stillness, you can keep going back to that very easily and very quickly when you need to. And it's, for me, one of the most important things we can do, from being, actually teaching these kinds of simple practices to young children, because young children who I treat in my practice, they're getting symptoms of stress and distress younger and younger, over the last 25 years. It would be maybe teenagers, 10, 11-year-olds, who would be suffering from symptoms of stress and distress, like tummy problems, headaches, anxiety disorders. It's getting younger and younger. You've got 7, 8-year-olds now who are, in quite uncomfortable places in themselves, because of social pressures and overstimulation. We're in a world of overstimulation, crazy overstimulation, and trying to find a place of comfort and security within that, within all the fast pace of change in this modern world, to me is actually one of the most important things we can do, and everybody can do. And so this is why I think it's a subject I talk about and bang on about a lot, and will keep coming back to, because it's so important. And I've been practicing meditative-based techniques for 25 years, and actually I find it increasingly important, because in my work it's very slow, meditative, and deals with stillness actually when we're working with people, but I still do my own practice, at least once a day, possibly twice a day when I can, which for me involves certain meditative-based techniques and doing some standing techniques, qigong type practice. So for me, it's vital, and people do yoga, etc., etc. So, it can be, a practice could be spending 5 minutes lighting a candle and praying, or it can be staring at the candle and just watching that, or sitting watching nature, looking at a tree. What I suppose we're interested in doing is finding a little moment to, you could say switch off, but it's not switching off really. It's not disconnecting, it's actually reconnecting. It's actually coming into balance and actually touching base with yourself. Also, we're often overwhelmed with a variety of emotions which pass through us from, grief, sadness, fear, anger, rage, all of these kind of passing emotions which are part of our human condition and are absolutely normal. We sometimes just need time to sit quietly and allow those emotions, just fully allow them for a minute and just let them pass. And that in itself is incredibly healing, actually, just to connect with ourselves enough to go, do you know, I was feeling angry there, or I was feeling upset, and sit with that. And there's something amazing with the idea of just sitting with something, just allowing it. And when we allow it, it transmutates. The energy of it starts to change, and it's the most simple thing in the world, but the thing that we least are able to do as humans, and it's an incredible continual learning experience to do that. But what I want to talk about here actually is this idea of programming and deprogramming. So, for example, programming stress patterns. Let's talk about anxiety, because anxiety is a huge subject, and a subject that my current book I'm writing about is anxiety and processes to deal with anxiety. But addiction's another very similar pattern where you're programming your brain. So preterm stress before you're born, the state of the nervous system of your mother, young childhood emotional patterns are normally. I mean, this is relatively normal. I'm not even talking the far end of trauma, genetic conditioning. All these kind of very early patterns set up programming in the brain. They wire up neurological pathways. The part of the brain, the amygdala, actually in fear and anxious conditions, actually it rewires itself. It actually grows. It forms extra synapses and actually can have a process of actually growing when there is greater stressors. And stressors can obviously come from a wide variety of situations. But I'm just talking here about normal everyday stuff. Fear. And actually the amygdala is very important because it gives us a pre-conscious reaction to fear. So, we're out, we see a tiger in the on the plains of Africa as early man. The amygdala kicks in, and we have we're not thinking about the tiger. It gives us a pre-conscious reaction so that we can actually set into motion certain parts of our nervous system which will get us away from that tiger. This fight-flight response through another part of the brain called the hypothalamus is kicked into gear, very fast-wired. So it's a pre-conscious, fear-based reactive response, hugely important for survival. But unfortunately, these days, there aren't so many tigers around. They're perceived tigers. They're perceived stressors. They're overwhelm, their social conformation, their social pressures, pressures to be a certain thing, to look a certain way. All these things are kind of, as it were, a modern tiger. And they program our brain very early on to be reactive. And with this, we're talking specifically about anxiety, but we can talk about a whole different areas. But what I'm interested in here is this process of developing, cultivating a practice is to actively deprogram the brain. So we're cutting a new groove, and this is especially important when we're dealing with anxiety, and that's why I'm writing a whole book with maybe 30, 40 developing sequenced techniques which build on each other to deprogram that pattern and set a new program in there. It's hard work. It takes time. But we cut this new groove out of stillness, self-acceptance, and allowing what is, and using a variety of techniques around these concepts, and we start to find this quietude, this quiet stillness, this important process of touching base with ourselves. And it's very important. And actually, breath is a huge important part of this. And I'll talk about this in the future lots, because the breath is one of the ways in to do this. And there's a variety of specific breathing techniques that can help us develop this quietude. But actually, what does meditation do? What does doing this reconnection thing do? Actually, it's touching base with ourselves, allowing our emotions to process, rebalancing our breath. It actually energizes us, gives us better sleep. This is all research-based. Clearer mind, better sleep, happier, healthier. Some of the stress-related conditions are directly affected. Cardiovascular problems, gastrointestinal problems that can be stress-related. It's huge. The quality of our sleep, which is another massive subject to talk about, is thoroughly affected by doing some of these simple techniques. So it's vital, but it's also vital for our state of mind. And I think that's really important. The Taoists would talk about this process of cultivation. It's like preparing the garden and sowing the seeds. So actually, you're putting an active process in to remodel and reprogram the brain. And it's like planting seeds of stillness. And every time we do that practice, we will reconnect it. It's like every time you do the practice, you water and cultivate those seeds until they grow into this beautiful flower. So actually, every time we tune into a certain way of breathing or do a couple of techniques to rebalance and re-engage with this stillness, it builds and it builds and it builds, and it counterbalances all of those stresses in life. And actually, 10 minutes a day of doing that can actually be life-saving in its importance. And I can't stress the importance of it, and that everybody in this world should be doing this very simple work. And that's really what I'm trying to say is this stuff's important. And if you want to know more, we'll work on with this. But there's a million different ways of doing this out there, and I'm just talking about a few of the different ways. Anyway, have a good meditation today.